The nature of the beast. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Metal Gear Rex, the newest of its kind. Almost 45 feet in height, equipped with Vulcan cannons and laser array, and shielded by a cutting-edge composite armor, rendering the Union impervious to even heat, high-explosive anti-tank warheads. And I hadn't even gotten to the truly scary part of this thing. The crown jewel of this Shadow Moses Metal Gear was its railgun technology. The gun was designed to fire nuclear warheads clear of the atmosphere, where they would automatically align themselves to the target and ride the optimal trajectory back down to Earth. So what, you may think? There's a big fat missile flying in from the sky. Who cares where it came from? Just shoot the thing down. But there's the catch. You won't be able to find any of Rex's warheads, let alone shoot them down. Don't believe me? The facts bear me out. Normally, ballistic missiles go through 4 phases from launch to impact. The first is the boost phase, which consists of the time between the missile's launch and the point at which it leaves the atmosphere and exhausts its supply of rocket propellant. Following the burnout, the rocket enters the post-boost phase that concludes with the separation of the re-entry vehicle that contains the warhead. The third stage is the mid-course phase, in which the re-entry vehicle separates and achieves a controlled descent back into the atmosphere. The warhead's re-entry into the atmosphere and its arrival at the target mark the fourth and terminal phase. Current missile defense systems are alerted to incoming ballistic missiles by detecting the rocket burn from the missile's boost stage. However, Metal Gear's missiles technology employs a railgun rather than conventional rocket propulsion to achieve boost stage acceleration. As a result, there is nothing for existing missile defense systems to detect. The railgun's effectiveness is nothing short of amazing. With a range of over 3,000 miles, rivaling that of a mid-range ballistic missiles, it reliably homes in within 170 feet of the target 50% of the time, placing it in the same class as high-end ICBMs. The ability of a Metal Gear to conquer virtually all terrain means that the railgun can launch a stealthy nuclear strike from almost any spot of the globe. This invisible attack would make it impossible for anyone to pinpoint the origin of a given missile, even in the event of a strike. Without a clear aggressor to retaliate against, the concept of a mutual assured destruction falls apart. Without the leader of MAD, the existing rules of nuclear non-engagement would no longer apply. And it also wouldn't matter if the whole world knew that a nuclear missile would be launched from Shadow Moses Island. The missile defense system was helpless against the new breed of ballistic missiles. This was exactly what the terrorists counted on in unleashing Metal Gear Rex in its all-powerful nuclear weapon against the world. What I finally saw inside the fortress. Anyway, I trudged through the cave, sweating under the weight of my trusty tuna. Soon, the rocks gave way to smooth walls and a row of bright lights. I had finally arrived. This was no doubt the cradle of insurrection, that military facility which Solid Snake so brilliantly penetrated, the eye of the storm that threatened to engulf the world. Fortunately, there was not a soul to be seen. I could, however, hear a faint cry amidst the whistle of the wind. "Gary, help me!" I couldn't believe my ears. How could anyone on a remote island that I've never visited know my name? I took a good cautious look around and saw a familiar figure among the steel pillars in the corner. It was John D., my cousin, who had so carelessly pitched me overboard into the sub-zero water only a few hours ago, was now sitting on the ground, tied to a post. What had happened? "Help! Gary!" I trotted over to where he was, calling pathetically, the tuna heavy on my back. He smiled weakly when he saw me. "What the hell happened to you, John D?" I asked, crouching down next to him. "I don't know. Right after I let you off, this black helicopter came around." "A helicopter?" "Yeah, a kind of a squarish black one. Next thing I know, I'm tied up here, Gary. Why are you still wearing that fish?" Was there more to this as I suspected? Who was responsible? The military? Or that mysterious group mentioned in the disc? The one whose authority outstrips even that of the President of the United States? My thoughts were interrupted by a sudden gunfire. I instinctively pulled the tuna over again. "Gary, you gotta help me. Untie me, will ya?" Where was the shooter? The bullets were wildly ricocheting off the post, making it impossible for me to pinpoint the origin. If I stay put, I was dead meat. What would be my next course of action? "Untie me, man! Gary!" "Don't call me Gary. I'm just a tuna." I started to run, dodging bullets, sprinting up the stairs. I was unstoppable, speeding away like a gazelle in a large fish skin. Farewell, Cousin John D. There are responsibilities greater than your safety that I must shoulder. Mine is a high and lonely path. Solid Snake versus the Army of Darkness. Let's take this moment to review Solid Snake's footsteps. The nuclear weapons disposal facility that he had infiltrated was crawling with terrorists, and engaging the enemy was unavoidable. This was a battlefield, no mistake about it. Snake's progress had been impeded at every step by the patrolling squads of super genome soldiers, and such formidable foxhounds such as Psychomantis, the master of psychokinesis and mind reading, the chameleon-like decoy octopus, the chain gun wielding giant Vulcan Raven, and Sniper Wolf, one of the best marksmen in history. The following is a profile of individuals whose involvement with the government conspiracy seems to be the most intimate. The information should help make the terrifying truth about this case more clear. Revolver Ocelot. An ex-Sputnez, also known as Shalashashka, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, he found lucrative contracts as a mercenary in conflict-ridden regions throughout the world. His activities led to his recruitment by the U.S. government and his entry into Foxhound. As his code name indicates, he is a brilliant marksman whose preferred weapon is a revolver. Ocelot challenged Snake when he came looking for Kenneth Baker, the president of ArmsTech, but the battle never reached the conclusion Ocelot wanted to due to the sudden intrusion of the stealth camouflage-clad cyborg ninja. The ninja's sword cut a deadly arc right through Ocelot's right arm, and Ocelot retreated in agony. The Russian sharpshooter also served as an liaison between his terrorist band and a Russian militia led by the renegade Colonel Golukovich. According to Foxhound leader Liquid Snake's master plan, the Russian militia would join them on Shadow Moses after the nuclear strike had been launched. They would then commence an all-out assault on the rest of the world from their safe retreat on the island. With nuclear missiles that could neither be detected nor defended against, over 1,000 first-class Russian soldiers, next-generation genome commandos, and the combat skill and technical cunning of Foxhound, this new army's objective was nothing short of World War III. The Ninja. The mystery figure equipped with a reinforced exoskeleton and stealth camouflage confounded Snake as well as the terrorist with his superhuman strength and agility. His interest seemed not to have been what was happening within the facility. Evidence suggests that he was there solely to engage Snake in battle. It was through such an encounter that Snake realized the identity of the ninja. His name had been Gray Fox, and he was supposed to have been killed by Snake, but his best friend. This may seem surprising, but the dead coming back to life is a fairly routine occurrence. There are examples throughout the world to prove the fact. When a Rolling Grace's grave was relocated in 1952, there were deep gouge marks discovered on the inside of the Hungarian farmer's casket lid. It looked as though the dying man had tried to claw his way out of a coffin. On a brighter note, a Japanese man called Jin Imon Natatakama walked out of the stalactite cave in 1914, a full 10 years after he had gone missing while exploring the same cave. His family was doubly astonished to discover that he had apparently not aged a day since they last saw him. All this makes complete sense to me, and it should to you as well in a moment. 2 words: pyramid power. I had no doubt that Gray Fox was forced to undergo the same revival process by the military scientists in the course of their horrific genetic experiments. Liquid Snake. I know exactly what you are thinking as you hear the name of the man who led the Shadow Moses uprising, and my answer is yes. Solid Snake, our hero, and Liquid Snake are none other than twin brothers. They are not, however, twins in the usual sense. This is yet another manifestation of the U.S. military's dangerous love affair with genetic engineering. The 2 snakes are fighting machines created through the so-called Project Les Enfants Terribles. The rumors that the government is attempting mass production of super soldiers are numerous and persistent. Just the other day, I came across something called D-People EO, a humanoid combat droid. Development on the outer shell had gone off without a hitch, but the unit had to have a human being inside to function, which decreased its utility somewhat. The military finally realized that the fact late in the game and pulled the plug. There was also a plan to use a well-known psychokinetics DNA material to breed an army of gifted soldiers. Unfortunately, someone pointed out that there is indeed no spoon, at least not in a normal combat situation. Solid and Liquid Snakes, however, were successfully created from their father, Big Boss, genetic material. They were literally born to be extraordinary soldiers, and it was no surprise that when they finally met, the result would be a titanic confrontation. What I saw on the roof. I hauled myself and the tuna up the steps, dodging the invisible sniper. The spiral staircase seemed to go on forever. Just as I was about to give up the climb, I saw the exit to the roof. I pulled open the door and lurched into the faintly lit gloom. The sub-zero wind felt soothing on my overworked body. I laid the tuna down and sat down next to it, trying to catch my breath. The enemy may pursue me even here, but I had nothing left in me to run with. I pulled out my hip flask of peanut butter and bourbon and took a long swig. The fiery liquid slid down my throat, hot and thick. Peanut butter is my Waterloo. When I was a kid, I was a wuss who couldn't eat peanut butter like other red-blooded children. One day, I decided to confront this weakness of mine and put myself on a peanut butter overload. Anything I put in my mouth had to have peanut butter on it. I piled the stuff on everything, from chili dogs without onions, my favorite dish, to spearmint gum, to my first girlfriend's lips. That's a bit disturbing. The inevitable result was that I came to hate peanut butter. If I didn't like it that much before, I now loathe it with abandon. If I could gather the entire world's supply of peanut butter and dump it in the Bermuda Triangle, I would. As it is, all I can do is eat as much of the stuff as I can. Peanut butter. I will always hate you. And how does that song go? And I will always hate you. No, that's not it. Will always. Must be another song I'm thinking of. Can't remember. Snow was starting to coat my shoes. Where was my tuna? Oh, there it is, right next to me. Bright light in my eye. Now I remember what day it is. June 24th, the anniversary of my UFO abduction. Why am I so sleepy? And what is that sound? It was a chopper, a squarish black one, and it was coming closer. Fox dye, the secret assassination virus. If you recall, I wrote that the two hostages, the DARPA chief Donald Anderson and the Armstech president Kenneth Baker, died of a heart attack while they were being rescued by Solid Snake. The actual cause of their death, however, was specifically engineered assassination virus called Fox dye. Fox dye is a retrovirus that kills only a select people. Its development was passed on to Naomi Hunter from her predecessor. Once Fox dye finds its way into its target's system, the person dies almost immediately. It's practically a viral equivalent of spontaneous human combustion. Dr. Hunter had injected Solid Snake with this virus as he unwittingly made contact with his targets one by one. They fell prey to the retrovirus's power, but the decision to infect Snake was not hers. That order, in fact, came directly from the Pentagon. The Defense Department's goal. The true objective of the DoD was to selectively assassinate the perpetrators of the terrorist uprising. All Snake had to do was to come into contact with the targets. The mission objectives he was actually given, namely to stop the nuclear launch and rescue the hostages, was nothing more than a smokescreen. By simply sending Snake in as a disease vector, the Pentagon stood to reclaim their expensive investments, Metal Gear, and the bodies of the Genome soldiers, with little risk of damage. The Pentagon also believed that Fox dye would successfully cover up the incident by the virtue of its lethality. However, Naomi Hunter's re-engineering of the virus cast grave doubts on the reliability of Fox dye itself. Even though the nature of her manipulation was unknown, the Pentagon decided to take extreme measures to counteract this development. The bomber on the horizon. Alarmed by the news of Dr. Hunter's tampering, the then Defense Secretary Jim Hausman personally took over as the mission's commander and headed for Shadow Moses on AWACS. Around at the same time, a bomber took off from the base in Galena, Alaska, carrying a payload of surface-piercing B-6113 tactical missile. The Defense Secretary had decided on a more direct approach to cover up, fighting nuke with nuke. It was a rationale that smacked of a return to the arms race, and Snake was furious. He already succeeded in destroying Metal Gear Rex, and the terrorist incident was all over for all intents and purposes. Was a nuclear airstrike to be his prize for accomplishing all of this? As it turned out, the airstrike never happened. Somebody had countermanded Jim Hausman's orders. You may think that the only person with the authority to override the orders of the Secretary of Defense was his Commander-in-Chief, the President of the United States. But like most things in this account, the truth is far from obvious. The hand that stopped the nuclear strike was that of a shadowy secret society. But what kind of a group is it whose power outstrips even that of the American presidency? The face of the enemy. When I came to, I was sitting in a weather station cabin with a burlap sack on my head and my hands tied behind my back. So this is the way it ends, I thought dimly. I hauled myself all the way out to this pimple on the Arctic and die at the hands of an invisible executioner without finding out a thing. One of my captors moved in closer and started to rummage through inside my chest pocket. I cursed inwardly. This is where I carried Nastasha Romanovna's disc, the entire account of the Shadow Moses incident. My policy is the best way to ensure that something doesn't get stolen is to have it with you at all times. Clearly, I need to reevaluate that one. The man easily found and seized the disc. What is this? He demanded. Whatever it is, it's worth more than you, I respond, with as much menace and dignity as the burlap on my head allowed. Well, well, that is something. What followed was both highly tenacious and painful, and nothing of great significance was said until that electrifying statement. We have the disc back. We've now come full circle since the start of my account, and caught up to the point where it originated. It was unclear how the disc had gotten to Max Smithson at Mega Surprise, but my captor's words indicate that the disc had originally belonged to them. Either that, or they were the ones who wanted it the most urgently. I took my courage in my hands and opened a dialogue with them. Yo, you guys happen to be that secret society whose power outstrips even that of the American presidency? Answer me, you artificial coloring on a cheap drugstore candy cane. This had the exact effect I had hoped for, namely to send them into a violent fit of rage. I must have hit pretty close to home. The contents of the disc were as good as verified. This was indeed the secret society whose power outstripped even that of the American presidency. In my delight, I hardly paid attention to the obscenities that were being screamed at me, nor to distinct sound of a gun being pulled out of its holster. It was then that the cabin suddenly erupted into controlled chaos. It seemed only seconds from the time the window was smashed and into the moment I realized that my captors had been decimated, and I was alone with my savior. Who was this human whirlwind? I was ready to lose my lunch from the curiosity and the terror. I could taste the peanut butter in my mouth. I could hear the enigma walk up to me and lift the burlap sack off my head. I concentrated on the hammering of my heart for a moment, then slowly looked up. There was nobody there. I could see nothing, sense nothing, but someone was untying the ropes biting into my wrist. Invisible hands placed themselves on either side of my head in a strange parody of a cornuration. They deftly removed the bandana I had earlier fashioned into a clumsy bandage for my bruised head. The faded piece of cloth was not my own, but a flotsam found on the beach. I reached for the unseen figure with my shaking hands, but with one quick flick of the bandana, it was gone. But there were more surprises to come. As I gingerly moved my stiff body, I felt an unfamiliar bulk against my chest, and discovered the precious optical disc, miraculously recovered. Not only that, but there was enough backup copies to fill me with awe and pop the stitches on my flimsy pocket. I thought of my mysterious savior, possessed of superhuman fighting ability, invisible, and capable of burning disc in an instant. There was only one possible explanation. He had to be an alien, probably the little gray kind. Life after Shadow Moses. And so I came in from the cold to my hole of an apartment in New York, my trusty tuna beside me. The landlord mentioned that my neighbor, the starving student, had gone missing recently. It could be that I was nosing around the wrong information from his machine. If I ever see him again, I should apologize. I am currently banging out this manuscript on an antique typewriter. This is the truth as described on the optical disc, and as elaborated and verified on my own experiences on that fearsome island. As this account draws to a close, my thoughts dwell more and more on Nastasya Romanakov, the woman who risked everything by recording the facts of the incident onto the disc. I think it was her way of giving voice to the victims of this mission. The casualties of nuclear war weapons throughout modern history, and to all the lives disrupted and damaged by an elaborate government conspiracy. Her will was passed on to a counterculture journalist in New York City. That's me, and the truth is now out there for all to see, just as she dreamed. Readers, the responsibility to dismantle the facts of Shadow Moses incident is now yours. What will you risk to know the truth? Publishers afterword. This nonfiction work was based on the factual account written by Nastasia Romanenko, a military analyst who allegedly took part in a secret mission to counter a terrorist incident on Alaska's Shadow Moses Island. Her account was published in its original unabridged form as In the Darkness of Shadow Moses after the successful publication of this volume. Gary McGolden, the author, is a journalist and a nonfiction writer who is best known for his bestseller, The Telekinetic Powers of the Loch Ness Monster, the true energy source of UFOs. The details of McGolden's adventures on Shadow Moses remain uncorroborated, but there are serious doubts as to his tuna aid landing on the island. There is in fact ample evidence that he was swept out to another small island several miles south of Shadow Moses and failed to realize that. McGolden had seemingly vanished into thin air following his manuscript's arrival at our humble offices. While this has been a great source of great pleasure to our accounting department, I sincerely hope that this notoriously fickle but talented writer is hard at work on a follow-up to this volume. Though certain aspects of the book require further fact-checking, this alone should not dissuade you of the veracity of many of its main assertions, nor should you dismiss the contents of Nastasia Romanenko's disc outright. Instead, readers should approach this account with an open mind and a sense of adventure, much as Gary McGolden did when he first received the disc in the mail. I should note, however, that Gary was mistaken about one thing. I never mailed him that disc. Max Smithson, Editor-in-Chief, Mega Surprise Magazine. Now we have In the Darkness, Shadow Moses, the unofficial truth. I'll be right back, though. Hey, people. I am back, and I'm ready to read the final one, In the Darkness of Shadow Moses, the unofficial truth. I got some water with me, because I have a feeling this is going to be long. How long? Okay. I regret my decision already. Oh, here we go. I dedicate this book to the casualties of Shadow Moses, as well to all those who suffered the tyranny of the nuclear weapons, and to Richard Ames. Nastasia Romanenko.